Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by Snickers. Rookie mistake? Maybe you just need a Snickers. I'm Jamie, that's Dave, that's Heath. We're looking at the waiver wire options for you for Week 14 at quarterback and running back. And we'll start with the quarterbacks and looking at the ones on a bye. Remember, 6 teams on a bye, so you're not going to have a couple of prominent guys in Aaron Rodgers and Justin Fields. Also, Marcus Mariota, Matt Ryan, Andy Dalton, Taylor Heineke. All those wonderful quarterbacks are not playing for this upcoming week. The quarterbacks to add, not exactly the best list, but you could be having to fill some holes, certainly in Superflex and 2-quarterback formats. Tyler Huntley most likely starting for Lamar Jackson. Mike White definitely starting for the Jets. Ryan Tannehill will hopefully have Traylon Burks, but a good matchup against the Jaguars. Brock Purdy, now the guy for the 49ers, at least for the foreseeable future, with Jimmy Garoppolo out. Mac Jones has a potentially good matchup. Hopefully he takes advantage of it against the Cardinals. And Sam Darnold has a good matchup against Seattle. Same thing. Hopefully he takes advantage of that situation as well. Let's talk about a couple of these guys. We'll start with Ryan Tannehill. So the Jaguars have been very, very forgiving to opposing quarterbacks. However, Tannehill has struggled the last couple of weeks. But you look at what's coming up for him. He gets Jacksonville this week, the Chargers next week, the Texans, if you want to buy into that matchup, even though we have not seen quarterbacks have success against Houston. But Dave, when you look at Ryan Tannehill, could he have a good game against Jacksonville?
I think he can. We've seen Derrick Henry starting to struggle and the offensive line starting to struggle for Tennessee the past few weeks, and that Jaguars run defense has actually been okay. I don't want to give them too much credit and say that they've been great, but they've been all right in that pass defense. I mean, Jared Goff just hung 25 points on them, so I think that there's definitely room for Ryan Tannehill to be serviceable as a bye-week replacement quarterback. He's my favorite of the guys that are available in like 40+% of leagues.
So, but not ahead of Huntley or ahead of Mike White.
He's ahead of both of those guys for me for this week only.
Okay, yeah, I'd rather have both those. I just think it's probably one of those games where he throws 25 passes. He might get 2 touchdown passes. He might, like you were saying earlier in the year, find a way. But he's also got the potential to be in the 150 to 200-yard passing range, and he hasn't hardly run at all this season. So I think the floor is really, really low, and the ceiling is not that high.
I just wonder what will happen. To me, it's going to be kind of like this Traylon Burks swinging a little bit. You know, if he doesn't have Burks, I don't want to trust him. This has got to be a situation where they have to get if they want to do anything in the playoffs. They have to throw the ball better, certainly, but they can't have Derrick Henry running like this or they're done. They're absolutely done.
Right.
So he destroys them. He's from that area. This is a big game for him, I'm sure. So hopefully Derrick Henry does get going. Ryan Tannehill will probably have modest numbers, but can certainly be better than the other guys. I know you differ a little bit on that, Heath, but those other guys have tough matchups. So in terms of Tannehill, we'll see how he goes. Now, Heath, in terms of Purdy, we're looking at a potential rest of season starter. So Superflex 2-quarterback leagues, it's easy to buy into him. But in 1-quarterback leagues, taking on the Bucs, we know he's got great weapons. Can he do at least what he did against Miami, which he had 18 fantasy points stepping in for Jimmy Garoppolo?
This game right now is an over-under of 37. They're expecting almost no points. I'm pretty concerned, and Pete talked about it yesterday. A lot of times guys can come in that first action and look pretty good, and then the next week it's a reawakening. I just think this Tampa Bay defense is going to give him all kinds of trouble. He can do it. The way he does it is he has a couple of dump-offs to Christian McCaffrey, and McCaffrey just takes him into the end zone. That's kind of what he did last week. It's not somebody I want to trust.
It doesn't have to be McCaffrey, though. It could be Deebo Samuel. It could be Brandon Ayuk. It could be George Kittle. The only reason why we are going to like this guy is because who he has to throw to. And I think the offensive line is going to be okay as well. So I don't mind him, but we're going to go over so many other names that I like better than Brock Purdy. And I'd rather have Mike White. Like, if both those guys are on the waiver wire, I'll take my lumps with White this week and then start White the rest of the season.
You like Mac Jones in his matchup against Cardinals?
I do. I thought he played terribly on Thursday against Buffalo, but that's Buffalo. I think that's a pretty tough defense, and I think the matchup against Arizona is going to be better for Mac Jones, and I'm sure that the Patriots realize how much they stink on offense. The short area passing attack that the coaching staff wants to do plays right into the weakness of that Arizona defense. Arizona, great at taking away the deep ball, terrible against short passes. And so I think Mac Jones might actually have the opportunity to dink and dunk his way to 250 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Not a bad streaming quarterback for this week.
I also think if the Patriots defense is successful against Arizona, he might throw, kind of like Brian Tannehill, he might throw 25 passes. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson can do whatever he wants. Now, maybe he does it in the passing game, and again, it's like Brock Purdy, he catches the passes, but not a top 20 guy for me this week.
It's really tough to trust Jones. He's got one game this season over 15 fantasy points. He's been miserable. A lot of that probably has to do with the play calling and the system that they're running, because that's been miserable. Jacoby Myers may not play, but we have seen a lot of quarterbacks have success against this Cardinals defense, mostly because those quarterbacks are better than Mac Jones. So just see what happens there for Jones. Could be a good desperation play if, in fact, you are stuck. Let's go now to the running backs and the quarterbacks that you're looking to move on from. Aaron Rodgers, if you want to drop him while he's on a bye week, great rest of season schedule when he does come back from his bye, but he's been bad the last 2 weeks, and we'll see what happens in terms of where the Packers are from a playoff standpoint. Jordan Love could be taking some starts at the end of the season for the Packers, so just keep that in mind. Easy to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo based on the injury that's going to knock him out for the rest of the season. All right, let's talk about the running backs here that we're looking at to replace that are on a bye. 2 Packers guys are not going to be there. No David Montgomery. Falcons are off. Jonathan Taylor's off. Alvin Kamara's been off, but he's actually officially off now. And then Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson going to be on a bye as well. The running backs that you're looking to add, and again, this list could be shuffled around by the time you read it on CBSSports.com, but James Cook looks to be the prize based on what he did Thursday night against the Patriots. Cam Akers coming off a strong game against Seattle. Tony Jones could be the lead guy for the Seahawks. You got some backup options here. Ty Johnson for the Jets, Jared McKinnon for the Chiefs, Jordan Mason now for the 49ers, and Chuba Hubbard for the Panthers there. So let's talk about a few of these situations as well. So Keith, James Cook, last time we saw him was great. Career high in carries, career high in receptions. Rushing yards, you see 64, not his best, but second best, and tied his career high in receiving yards. Is he now the lead running back in Buffalo, or is he going to eventually take over the job from Devin Singletary?
I think he has a chance to eventually take over the job. They basically played the same number of snaps. I think Singletary played one more snap in their most recent game. Buffalo has not been a team where this is what they did last week and this is what they're going to do this week with their running backs necessarily. We saw Singletary and Jack Moss go back and forth, but I think Cook has more explosiveness. He definitely has more potential in the passing game. He is a very good flex this week.
After the game against the Jets, they've got the Dolphins. I think you can run on the Dolphins. The Bears, you can definitely run on the Bears, and the Bengals. That game will be tough for them. And so in the game against the Jets and the Bengals specifically, throw the football. Use the running back in the passing game. Cook proved that he could do that. And the fact that he was either right on par in snaps or one snap behind Devin Singletary in their last game tells me that he's making progress on gaining a foothold in this offense. Love the idea of having him on my bench in case he ends up being the main running back for Buffalo. He could be a league winner.
And so I know it's our early rankings, but you have him as a number 2 running back.
I do.
You're going to keep it that way?
I'm probably going to keep it that way in PPR. I think he continues to have this role.
Interesting. Okay, we'll see how things go there for him. Hopefully that's the case. Cam Akers coming off a strong performance. He played 71% of the snaps, scored 2 touchdowns, his best performance of the season. Is he now somebody you could trust against the Raiders for this?
Ooh, trust is such a tough word when it comes to a Rams player, but he did look good. And you know that I've been like the biggest nitpicker of Cam Akers all year long, literally all year long. And now he's starting to look like his old self. I like what I saw. I don't think the offensive line was particularly great, but he's got a great matchup against Las Vegas this week. I don't mind him this week as a bye week replacement, maybe even a low-end number 2 running back himself.
I actually slightly prefer Akers to James Cook this week, but rest of the season, the upside for
Yes,
James Cook
you're right.
much higher. If something good would happen with James Cook this week, if we'd see him become the feature guy, then his upside is much higher than Akers, but slightly prefer Akers. Both of them as high-end flexes for me this week.
You just got to wonder what would happen if they're chasing points, because they're playing with a lead against the Seahawks, which is not something we probably expect to see from the Rams moving forward. That helped Akers. The week before, it was Kieran Williams playing basically the same amount of snaps, and Akers just does not work in the pass game. He had 1 catch for no yards on 1 target against Seattle, so he's probably going to have to score, but we have seen the Raiders give up plenty of touchdowns to running backs throughout the course of the season. The Seattle backfield is certainly something to keep an eye on. It's feeling like it's going to be like the Pittsburgh situation from a week ago, where the number 1 guy was probably not going to play, and then all of a sudden Najee Harris came back, and we were debating Benny Snell versus Jalen Warren. Well, now you have Najee Harris dealing with this jammed ankle. We don't know exactly what that means, but we'll see what happens. And DJ Dallas, who looks like the number 2 guy, dealing with a high ankle sprain. But Tony Jones, very fascinating story. Just real quick. He went into the medical tent at the start of the 3rd quarter because he lost a contact. He couldn't find a replacement for the contact. He took out the other contact. He couldn't drive without his contacts if he had to leave the game without his contacts. So he was basically playing that game blind. This is according to the Tacoma News. And he said if he saw a blue dot coming at him, he knew to avoid it, meaning that was the Rams player. Just unbelievable.
He's playing against blurs.
So Tony Jones could be the lead guy there. Travis Homer is also dealing with a knee injury. He didn't play. So how are we approaching the Seattle backfield in terms of potential flex play, I think, at best, if there is a lead option, if we're going to find out who that is?
The way I have him ranked is Jones is a flex play, and I really don't have any other interest in the other running backs for now until we know what the story is. And so what do you do on the waiver wire with them? I say you don't put in much effort to get any of them on your team. Maybe your 2nd, 3rd waiver claim on a Seattle running back. Jones is the one who who I know is in line to play right now, so I'd probably prioritize him ahead of DJ Dallas. If I've got Ken Walker, I might move him a little bit higher in my ranking order, and I would not spend a lot of fab on any Seattle running back.
Feels like one of those classic landmine situations where you just let somebody else pick that guy up and hope they start him against you, because I don't really think Tony Jones is going to. I think if it's DJ Dallas, there's a chance that he could have enough success to where he's a high inflex. I think Tony Jones is probably a low inflex regardless of whether Dallas plays.
But we always talk volume.
Right.
And this run, whoever it may be, Jones, Dallas, Homer, we don't know. They may add somebody.
Alex Collins is going to come
Where's
back out of the
Where's
woodwork.
Marshawn these days?
Yeah, maybe so. But we know that somebody could be getting 20 touches.
Yeah.
And so, with 6 teams on a bye, not a bad situation to buy into. Again, the matchup is not great. The Panthers have been really good against opposing running backs, but we'll see. So just something to keep an eye on there. So yeah, you run waivers on Wednesday, might be something to keep an eye on. Running backs to move on from, the 2 Jets guys not named Zonovan Knight, and at least at this point, Ty Johnson. Maybe you want to hold on to Michael Carter. I can see that, but with the way that Knight is working right now, shallow leagues, you can certainly move on from Carter. All leagues, you can move on from both Jets running backs. And Kenyon Drake, there's a chance that J.K. Dobbins plays this week. Drake, while he did play ahead of Gus Edwards in terms of snaps in Week 13. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by Snickers. Rookie mistake, maybe you just need a Snickers. I'm Jamie, that's Dave, that's Heath. We're looking at the wide receiver and tight end waiver wire options for you for Week 14. And we'll start with the wide receivers on a bye. Packers are off. Can't believe we don't get Christian Watson. Let's just play him on a bye. Hopefully just get another touchdown from him. No Chase Claypool, no Michael Pittman, no Drake London, who's coming off a strong game. Hopefully that continues when the bye is over. No Chris Olave, no Terry McLaurin as well. So you're going to be without some star power at the wide receiver position. The guys you could be looking to add, and this is very similar to last week, where there's not really a slam dunk wide receiver, but several options that could be of use to you heading into Week 14 and beyond. Nico Collins in a great spot. Michael Gallup's been producing of late. Mac Hollins, same thing. Rondell Moore hopefully will be healthy coming off the bye for the Cardinals. You got DJ Chark and Jameson Williams worth looking at for the Lions. Corey Davis, a couple of Ravens options in deeper leagues, and then Isaiah Hodgins, coming off a strong game where he scored for the Giants. We'll see if he gets a little more playing time for a receiving core that definitely needs some help. So let's talk about a few of these options here. We'll start with the situation in Houston. So Heath, you've been a Nico Collins guy for a pretty good stretch, and 10 targets, 3 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown, but no Brandon Cooks. And so is Collins somebody that's going to start to produce a little bit more? It's a really tough matchup against the Cowboys this week, but what's the rest of the season outlook for him?
Yeah, he's a number 3 wide receiver based almost entirely on volume because the efficiency has been terrible. Kyle Allen has not helped this passing game at all, but he has 36 targets over his last 4 games. And he gets getting 9 targets a game, especially when he has 6 teams on a bye, right around wide receiver 30. If he gets into the end zone, he could possibly be a top 24 guy, but not much more upside than that.
If there's a positive to Nico Collins, it's that each of the past 4 weeks his target share has been at least 22%. That's good. And last week, his ADOT and his average route depth, both over 11 yards. That means he's getting targeted downfield a little bit more than what we've seen earlier this season. Almost all that production last week came in the 4th quarter, by the way, garbage time, but it's Houston. They're in garbage time every single second their offense is on the field. For the rest of the season, he could be their number 1 guy.
We know the story in Dallas with Odell Beckham visiting the Cowboys, Jerry Jones trying to make it an effort to get Odell Beckham on the roster, but nobody knows if Beckham can even play this year. So Michael Gallup's been producing at a very good level the last couple weeks. 2 games ago, season high in targets. Last week, he scores the 2 touchdowns. So Dave, is he becoming a little bit more of a reliable fantasy option, knowing that he's the 3rd guy for the most part in the Cowboys' passing attack, but starting to produce and getting 15 targets last 2 weeks?
He's starting to look better than he has been from earlier this year, and I think you've got to consider him among your number 3 wide receiver options moving forward, particularly in games that are going to be high scoring involving the Cowboys, and especially if the Cowboys do not sign Odell Beckham. If that doesn't happen, Gallup is their number 2 receiver.
Yeah, I think I'll probably like him more in future weeks than I do this week against Houston, just because this is not going to be one of those games that's going to be high scoring. And it is, you'd like to see more than 1 game all season long with more than 50 yards, but the fact that he was a target in the red zone does give you some hope for a touchdown.
Matt Collins has seen his targets increase as well over the last couple of weeks, but we do have a story that's at play here, and this is the week that both Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow are eligible to come off IR. There's no indication, according to Josh McDaniels, that will be the case. And it is actually a favorable matchup against the Rams because without Aaron Donald on the field, he's not expected to play. Their pass rush not the same, secondary not as difficult to overcome. Heath, is Matt Collins someone you're interested in for this week on Thursday night?
Yeah, he's definitely behind Nico Collins, but if you told me there was no Darren Waller and there's no Hunter Renfrow, then this week I would prefer him over Michael Gallup. I think rest of season, Gallup has more upside, especially if there's no Odell Beckham, because Hollins is probably going to get company very soon, but for as long as Renfrow and Waller are both out. It's kind of similar to the Nico Collins situation. It's been quite a few targets, not a lot of efficiency.
Yeah, it's just frustrating, but you never know if he finds the end zone. So hopefully that could be the case this week on Thursday against the Rams. Dave, for the Detroit guys, it's been a fantastic offensive outburst of late, and a game against Jacksonville, they scored 40 points. We're going to actually talk to DeAndre Swift coming up a little bit later in the show. But in terms of Chark and Jameson Williams, everybody's looking at Jameson Williams and waiting, and he finally played last week but didn't do very much. Chark has been building now, scored the touchdown against the Bills on Thanksgiving, had nearly 100 yards against his former team. Is he going to be maybe a consistent producer even the Jameson Williams role increases?
See, the problem is that the more that Jameson Williams' role increases, the more I expect DJ Chark's targets to come down. And he only had 6 targets against Jacksonville to begin with. He had a good game. He is a downfield receiver. I just can't count on him as a week-to-week fantasy proposition. He would be another wideout that I would look at for now as a number 3 option, probably more in half in non-PPR leagues than full PPR leagues. I eventually expect Jameson Williams to start getting a lot of targets in this offense, and I think he could be the better downfield threat, and Detroit actually uses him more than they use DJ Chark.
I just wonder, though, if Williams is ever going to get the playing time that he needs. It's just more, let's work him up until next year, and then just make sure he's 100% for next year, because that's the concern. Is he going to ever get to the point of the snap share, the target share, all the things that we look for better than DJ Chark? And Chark is still producing right now, so we'll see what happens there. The tight ends that you're moving on from, Brandon Cooks. The wide receivers moving on from Brandon Cooks, not producing and not healthy. Paris Campbell not playing and not producing. Curtis Samuel not playing, not producing. Darius Toney not playing, not producing. Chase Claypool, you get the theme, not playing, not producing. You can drop all of these guys. Tight ends on a bye for Week 14. The big one is clearly Cole Kmet, and we'll find out what happens with Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill. Good call, Heath, that Taysom Hill would be productive. He caught a touchdown in the game Monday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A little fluky, but still, he produced, so good for him. All right, those are the tight ends that you don't have available to you. The tight ends that you're looking to add, and there's one prize, and he might be the best player to add at any position this week, is Greg Dulcich, because we've been waiting for him to be a consistent producer. Struggled after the 3-game stretch where he came back from the preseason injury and then went into a little bit of a funk, and maybe now he's going to be back out of it. Hunter Henry has a great matchup against the Cardinals. Evan Ingram coming off a touchdown. K. Dotton, and they call him Chig Okonkwo. We'll see how things go there for him, making some big plays down the field for the Titans, and so we'll see what happens there. Heath, in terms of Dulcich, he's been your guy. You said after the 3-game stretch, during the 3-game stretch, he's going to be a rest of season starter. Are you back on board with that?
I think you have to be. It's the state of the position. A guy goes out and gives you 6 catches for 85 yards, and you can't consider doing anything other than ranking him in the top 10 next week, even if you know that a possibility of 1 catch for 11 yards exists. It's a good matchup against the Chiefs. They'll be throwing the ball a bunch because they're chasing the score. He gets the Cardinals the following week. Plan on starting him the next 2 weeks. If he lets you down, don't be all that surprised.
The thing that I like from Nathaniel Hackett is he said we're going to use him more like a wide receiver. And so that's the case, with Cortland Sutton being banged up. So, Dave, you like Mac Jones. I don't think Mac Jones is going to have a big game if Hunter Henry doesn't have a big game. And we know everybody has a big game from the tight end position for the most part against the Cardinals. So is this going to be one of those weeks?
You hope so, and that's why some people are going to start Hunter Henry, but he's a low-end starter in fantasy this week, whether it's PPR or non-PPR, and it's all because of the matchup against Arizona. At least 11 half PPR points to a tight end in 4 of their past 6 games. We're hoping that the Patriots see that, they recognize something in the coverage, and they lean on Hunter Henry. We did talk about how the Cardinals are not good at defending short area targets. Who's a better short area target than Hunter Henry? Well, Jacoby Myers. But if Myers is out, then I think I like Henry even more.
Should have had 2 touchdowns 2 games ago against the Vikings. Definitely got 1, and that was Mac Jones' best game, 27 fantasy points against Minnesota. Heath, quickly, Evan Ingram scored last week. We've been sort of all over the place with him. How's he going to do this week against the Tennessee Titans?
Well, it's not just us that have been all over the place. I mean, he had 7 targets in his last game. I think he had 7 targets in the 3 games prior to that. The Jags have been all over the place with him, but I do think that he's like Dulcich. He has one good game, and he's right back in that discussion as a borderline top 12 guy. I think you could consider him. There's no floor at all there.
Just keep an eye on Trevor Lawrence with that foot injury. Is expected to play, but if Trevor Lawrence is out, C.J. Beathard starts. You can't trust Evan Ingram. At least that's the way I would approach it. All right, that'll do it for the tight ends to add. The guys that you're moving on from. Tyler Higbee, still looking for his first touchdown. Did play a little bit better than he did 2 weeks ago, but still very frustrating even with John Walford back replacing Bryce Perkins. Hayden Hurst dealing with a calf injury, not somebody you need a roster. And here we go with Mike Gesicki once again, disappointing for another week. So drop him heading into the matchup this week for the Miami Dolphins as they take on the Chargers.